To be introduced and welcomed into the group, Enrique, is a wonderful privilege for me. We've taken strides along this journey together, and I'm happy to stand along your side and support everything that you're doing because the hacking HR community has been tremendous, and the people that you've engaged and have walked this journey and are creating positive waves out in communities and businesses all over the world is truly inspiring. So kudos to you, and thank you all that have participated in Hacking HR events. Enrique did mention that we were together recently in San Diego, and it really is one of the last times that groups got together. So it's still fresh in my mind as a special memory because the world has changed around us, hasn't it? So I'm going to share today that change is actually our most natural state. And I address change in a book I recently wrote and released in December of last year. And it's a lot of what I teach in workshops and a lot of what we're addressing as we go through challenging times. And it really starts with a premise that change is going to be more significant and more rapid than any time in history. And I think we've done a poor job in preparing people for change. So today, instead of jumping right into the deep end of the pool and getting heavy with it, I want to play around with the concept of change with you a little bit. And I'm going to go off screen here and bring up a few slides to walk through, and then we're going to take a little journey into it. And we're going to start with kind of some of the easy stuff and warm up a little bit. So I'm going to put the slides up, keep talking, and I offer you to play along and even write some things down here, and I'll ask for some feedback that Enrique will give, and that'll be part of our session here. We'll try to make this interactive rather than me just trying to hold your attention for a half an hour. I would really like you to play along and let's enjoy this and see if we can have some fun together. I am going to now share my screen. And I'll share this. So I'm not going to go in presentation mode because it becomes a little bit awkward to toggle back and forth, but hopefully you're now seeing the first slide, changes our most natural state. And what I would like you to write down, perhaps type into the chat or on LinkedIn Live, get some feedback to Enrique. We can capture that. We'll come back and explore that a little bit. But it's a simple question. Change is, what does it mean to you? If I simply ask the question, change is, what's the word that pops into your mind? And I think what we'll find is change is different things to different people. It reminded me of a conversation I was having just recently. It was last week with a friend, and we were talking about changes that are happening around us, and what the premise of his side of the story was that, Mike, people really don't change. Even though we're going through stress or different experiences, we're in a time now of stress and change that's happening around us. We're adapting our behavior. We're asked to do things that feel unnatural. And he was saying, fundamentally, Mike, people do not change. And through that conversation, as we kept exploring it and I was understanding his point of view, I finally stopped and asked him, you were previously married, correct? You had a first marriage. Yes. What happened during that marriage? What happened that ended that marriage? And he said, well, I think we've talked about it before. We just simply grew apart. which pretty much ended the conversation right there. Mike, fundamentally, people don't change. We grew apart. You have to pick one side of the argument. Needless to say, I didn't ask him to join my debate team because he ended his own argument. But that's the simple thing where we get a belief stuck in our mind about change. And we hold on to it and we hold on to it, even though our life experiences tell us that it's something different. I'm going to move on to the second slide here. Because when we look at going through change, and we're going to play around with the easy stuff a little bit, and then we're going to move into, are we exercising our greatest freedom, which is our freedom of choice? Are we creating change, or are we stuck on commanding to our beliefs and our methods and our previous way of doing things? Are we creating change, or are we allowing it to happen to us? And then we're going to talk about, are we proving or improving? I'll drop that now, come back live to you, have a little discussion around that. But these are the simple things to explore and walk into. And then we'll get into some deeper stuff. All right, I am going to stop sharing, come back to the screen. So as I said, we all have a different reaction to change. It's based on our feelings and our beliefs, the experiences that we've had, what we've been taught or conditioned to believe about change, and we hear the things that are normal. Enrique, can I ask you to come on and share some of the words that may have been shared?
Yes, I'm here. Some of the words are, let me tell you, let me go back a little bit. Necessary, life, everything, a journey, transition, future opportunity life, the new normal, transformational, new, inevitable, the only constant. I always say that, by the way. The transformation and times of disruption, necessary, natural, required, a gift, and learning.
Wow. This is an awesome audience. So what you often hear is change is hard, changes, and you hear all the negative pieces, and each one of those was an open embracing of change, which this is really exciting now because we don't have to go through as much changing of the mind. But we hear that change is a journey, right? And we go through some of the easy stuff. That here's why it's the most natural state. We are biologically programmed for change. We're born, we go from milk to soft foods to hard foods. Fortunately, at some point, we decide to stand up and start walking. It'd be pretty silly if we were crawling around as adults. We go through those physical changes. It's a very natural thing. All around us, the seasons are changing. We talk about change all the time, right? We change our minds. If we're sometimes in a conversation we don't want to be in, we change the conversation. We change our diets. We change our programs and routines. We change our clothes every day. So change is something that we talk about, we experience, we do every day. And of course, those are desirable events. Those are things that we choose. So we don't think about it very much. It seems very natural. But change is the one constant in our life, as you've shared. And then we get into, beyond the obvious everyday stuff, we get into the things that become a little harder, the big stuff. And the big changes like buying a new house and moving. We kind of become divided. It's a little bit more difficult. There's more stress. The outcomes of that can be a little less certain. And when we have, enter or welcome a new child into our homes, that's another big change, whether it's the first one or a second or an additional child. Each one of those creates a lot of change. There's uncertainty what the end of that journey will be. Change is constant in that way. When we move cities, Enrique's moved across the country recently. We changed jobs. Enrique left a job. Many people, up, it looks like it's going to trend up to 20 million, are with that job insecurity right now. We're uncertain as to the timing, and the uncertainty creates extra stress. It's not the change itself, but it's the uncertainty that the change has created that really gives us pause and causes us trouble. Now, I've gone through many changes in my life and my career, and actually, I guess I'm kind of a change junkie. So for me, it was really natural. It was pretty easy. I changed careers 4 times, and within those careers, I had projects, I had different jobs, 5 mergers and acquisitions through the last 18 years in technology. So change for me is something that I've embraced. It's been very natural, but it's not for everybody. My wife experiences and thinks about change very differently than I do. And so getting through that struggle with change, I had to really understand it from a different perspective, something that I struggled with. And throughout my life, really, certainly throughout my career, I've lived with a statement that I fully believed, and that's about patience. Patience was the hard thing for me. Change is a hard thing for many. My belief with patience is it was simply a waste of time. Why would we waste our time being patient? If it was going to take 6 months, 60 days would be better. I was told 4 years ago when I jumped into this consulting thing, Mike, it could take a year, it could take 2 years before you're really ramped up. And in my mind, it's like, I can invest those 6 months because 2 years or a year were out of the question. That would be like being patient. And what I learned along the way is patience was not waiting. Patience for me was understanding and making the choice to change my relationship with the timing of the outcome. So while I was able to stay focused on what the end result was going to be, the vision was clear, my actions were aligned, the discipline of staying after that was very clear. But to get out of that cycle of expectations, to keep myself steady and focused, I needed to change my relationship with the timing of the outcome because that was the piece I couldn't really control. I could have the illusion of control, but I could not always direct the timing of the outcome as deeply as I believed in the outcome and still do. And I think that's really important for me to equate to change when people struggle through change is it's really allowing ourselves to understand and become comfortable and change our relationship with that uncertainty at the end of the change. And I think that's where we can understand and help others along the path to change. I heard the word transformation, and I think, we're diving in now into the deep end of the pool. And that's really the hard stuff, right? That's where it becomes much more significant. Those are the big events, and the uncertainty and the outcomes have been challenging. So when we look at the numbers around digital transformation, over $1.2 trillion spent, $1.2 trillion over the last couple of years. It's still running at over an 80% failure rate. That's nearly $1 trillion of wasted money and effort. And there's reasons for that. We didn't prepare people to make the change. The technology was good. The methods, the procedures, the organizational design, the thinking, and everything else behind it were excellent at. What we failed to do is prepare people to accept and adopt change. We did not address the uncertainty and the relationship with uncertainty on the back end of that, and the cost for businesses and society and the stress level of people and really human capacity took a hit during that time. Our approach was wrong. Our knowledge is wonderful. Our methods are wonderful. That's a big challenge into itself, but we look at mergers and acquisitions fail at about a 50% rate, greater than 50% rate. Software development projects, 52% of projects are dropped before they're ever completed because of that lack of our capacity and ability to accept and adopt change. It's an important factor. While change is so natural in our lives as we went through the easy stuff and understood, we get into the deeper transformational work and it becomes harder. That relationship with uncertainty is much more important. So that's where we really get to this point of our choices and the choice of, are we creating change or are we waiting for it to happen to us? Because when change is forced on us, it's very different than when we're choosing it. When change is part of our growth journey, it's a welcome and acceptable experience that we have. When it's forced upon us from the outside with little choice, that's where our resistance starts to kick in. And oftentimes, we're not listening along the way to what people's experience is while we're driving change. And that forcing or our capacity or desire to prove rather than improve becomes a real barrier. Our mindset around, are we trying to prove the change, trying to prove an old method, trying to prove our way of doing things, makes it uncomfortable and creates barriers and resistance to change. If we can bring ourselves to that mindset of improvement, if we can become vulnerable enough to take feedback when we're leaders, when we're able to listen better to the feedback we're getting, to accept it, explore it, and respond appropriately, change becomes back to its natural state. That prove or improve becomes a key element to driving change and to accepting change. I want to bring this to a practical level, but first encourage that when we're going through these transformational journeys, and they are journeys, and there is difficulty, and it takes many people working together to bring them forward to a positive conclusion, or to bring them forward to positive steps along that journey that will continue. We can't lose our confidence. And losing confidence happens mostly because we lose our grace for other people. Our spirit of grace towards others that are on that journey with us becomes the most important element. To keep our confidence, to keep a team confidence together, psychological safety becomes really important. Psychological safety is that spirit of grace towards others as we're going through these times, because not everybody is going to accept and experience that change event in the same way. We have to be open, we have to be inclusive, and we really have to listen well. Those are important elements. I'm going to go back to the screen share here as we have 10 minutes left, and I'm just going to share these next couple of slides with you. It's important when we're looking at leading through change and when we are changing that we become navigators. I want to hit this little piece for you, bring some levity
I know
in.
what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah, you see? So what are you going to do?
It doesn't matter, it's in the past. I would say one of the things that we struggle with change the most is we want to drag the past with us. We hear the word best practice, we love best practices, we sit on them in business, we hear them a lot in many parts of our business. Certainly we hear them a lot in HR best practices. Sometimes we over rely on technology and we aren't able to allow the change to take place because we're pulling so much of the past with us. We're actually creating our own resistance because we will not let go of the past. I love that clip. I use it often because I think it's a great illustration. We need to become navigators to the future, and that means letting go of the past. I wanted to hit a couple of other statistics that I think are really important to look at. Where are we going to go in the future? We're in a terrible situation right now, right? There's to date, or as of yesterday, there was in the United States alone, there's 22,123 deaths because of the COVID virus. 116,000 worldwide. And they're going to increase. We haven't hit the peak yet. Those are going to continue to go up. It's a tragic time. I don't want to minimize that at all, but think of all of the change and disruption that everyone is affected by. We're all experiencing. Again, 20 million people in the United States will be out at least temporarily from their job. But there's another statistic you're looking at right now, or another number up there that says 120,000 every year. Stanford research that Jeffrey Pfeffer highlights in his book, Dying for a Paycheck, clearly illustrates that 120,000 unnecessary deaths happen every year from people just getting up and going to their job and experiencing toxic workplaces, bad bosses, horrible environments that somehow we deemed normal before this current crisis hit, before these big winds of change have overcome us. 120,000 unnecessary deaths were happening every year, and we were kind of accepting that. And while the 22,000 deaths now currently rapidly are not acceptable and have a huge impact, we must understand that what we were doing in the past, what was normal, is not normal. Normal wasn't that good, and therefore embracing change and moving forward to the next state really is a call to action and really important for us. Please understand that you are worthy, that you are the catalyst for change to move us from a bad state to a good state. And you own the narrative for your own lives. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We're going to talk about that just for a few more moments. We have a huge challenge ahead of us because there is no normal. And if normal existed, or it was the comfortable state, because we don't accept uncertainty, we have to be careful of what we're asking to go back to. The uncertainty in the future may be as likely better than the certainty of the past. We are not coming from a good place. The mental and physical fitness of our workforce and our work environments was very challenged. We know the numbers. We've seen the research forever. We can do better. And that's the call to action. It comes with embracing change, helping the person next to you discover their strength, their confidence, their ability to change, and embracing the power of choice that we all have. It's important that we listen and understand the experience people are actually having, rather than measuring against the experience we're telling them to have. I want that to sink in a little bit. Let's start understanding the experience that people are actually having, rather than measuring them against the experience we're telling them to have. That will ease the pain and the doubt and the uncertainty. You own the narrative for your own life. Don't wait for someone else. You get to be the leader. You get to be the change driver. You get to be the positive catalyst to the outcomes that we're all looking for. When you change your mind, you can change from bad to good. You can be the positive force. And that's my encouragement for you today. Enrique, I know we only have 2 minutes left, but I'm open to reflections here.
And reflections there will be. This is my notebook right now of some of the notes that I took from your presentation, and just wanted to highlight a couple of them that even personally have a deep impact on myself. You said patience is not waiting, but it's changing our relationship with the timing of the outcome, which is so powerful, because we think that being patient means sitting idly or just waiting, inactive, that things happen, right? Or at the same time, people think that taking time for ourselves means doing nothing, right? And one thing that I want to bring up, once again, after you did it through your conversation, is that you can take action, but you can't control the time in which what you're dreaming to build will happen. But you have to continue, taking action. Right?
That was a hard one for me.
It is hard for everybody. And this is something that it's hard for me because I try to move very fast. And in one of my job experiences, work experiences, which was not that positive, but like out of all negative experiences, you take some things that are very positive and teach you a lot. And one of my bosses said to me, you move too fast. And, the things, you can't force the world to move at the pace that you're moving. So you're going to have to be patient. It doesn't matter how fast you move. Some people don't move at that pace, and they won't move at that pace no matter how fast you move. And that's okay, right? And this is so powerful to me because, right now we want things to be resolved tomorrow, and we want to build the future of work, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And if that doesn't happen, then we are like, well, okay, it didn't happen. I'm going to just sit back and, do nothing until somebody else does. And that's not the case here. It is about taking action, but being okay with the pace at which the outcomes are happening. That's powerful to me.
Take people with us. And I think that's our greatest opportunity is let's get the many streams flowing together in a better direction. And then I think that significant change will happen when everybody is allowed to embrace it and we're able to go meet them where they are and bring them all together. And I think you demonstrate that really well for us, Enrique. I know that we share that vision of helping and empowering others. And again, this is just a great joy to be with you and your audience and this great group of leaders around the world.
No, likewise, it is always a privilege to me, but don't go yet. That sounded like a goodbye. Don't go yet. We have 2 more minutes with us. Because I want to say a couple of other things that came up to my mind when you were talking about them. You know, this concept that you just talked about of being, you know, in a positive relationship with the timing of the outcome is under siege, is under attack by Instagram, by famous people whose outcomes we see, but we never see the process that they had to go through to get there. So this relationship between the timing of the outcome and the effort that we're putting in to make that outcome happen is under attack because, you know, it seems that we're being told that if we don't succeed overnight, then we are a failure. You know, it seems that if we don't, don't make things happen quickly, then we should stop doing them because they don't make sense. Whereas in the past, you know, some people took years and years and years to build whatever they were building and being successful. So what's your recommendation for people who are getting all these messages like, you gotta make this happen in 1 week, you gotta lose weight in 2 days, but because if you don't lose 30 pounds in 2 days, you know, you are a failure. And or all these messages that are awful when they tell you, you know, become rich in 1 week. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. So what's
So,
your message for those people?
well, I'll just go directly at it. Right. So I think, you know, in today's world, in the situation we're all experiencing right now, the theory of going out and 10xing the world, those aren't the voices that are leading us out of this current crisis, right? Those might be the ones that are going and grabbing all the toilet paper. We're trying to make an extra buck off of hand sanitizer.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, great change, positive change happens not at the expense of others, but for the benefit of all. And those are the voices we need now. Those are the choices we need to be making. I think you hit it really well, Enrique, when you talk about physical health, right? So if you and I want to go out and get a six pack and a washboard stomach, right? If we had a choice of doing 500 sit-ups a day or getting ourselves down to eating lean foods and taking out all sugars and all carbs, we're actually going to get better results from our discipline with the fork over 30, 60 days than we will 30, 60 days of doing sit-ups and straining our hip flexors and our back. So I think that's the great analogy is the choice is abs actually come from your discipline with the fork over time. You can't just do sit-ups for 30 days and get to your goal.
Yeah.